China has wrapped up its top legislative meetings in Beijing. A key focus this year is on developing the country's economy following the coronavirus pandemic. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said the country is facing mounting pressure to create more jobs and defended China's modest growth target for 2021.
我们当然乐见经济向好，但是我们也清醒地看到，今年是在恢复性增长的基础上前行，有很多不可比的因素，而且世界经济复苏不确定性依然很大。我们说6%以上，6%不低啦。
The National People's Congress unanimously approved drastic electoral reforms for Hong Kong. Officials have called the move necessary to ensuring stability in the city. At the same time, US-China relations have dominated the agenda. Premier Li expressed hope that China and the US will respect each other's core interests as they work together towards achieving their shared interests. Olivia Song joins us for more on this from Beijing. Olivia, any major changes on China's policy towards the US then?
Well, the message that we're getting from Premier Li is pretty much similar to what we've heard other Chinese officials saying in the past week, and actually even since the Biden administration came into office. And today at the news conference, Premier Li said that he hoped that China-US ties would be able to develop in a healthy way, even as he also defended China's position when it came to issues that it does not see eye to eye with China over, for example, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and over alleged human rights abuses in Xinjiang as well. Now, Premier Li said that he hoped that both sides would be able to respect each other's core interests, and as well as to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. And here we know that China has been angered by the US over issues like Xinjiang and Hong Kong, which it does consider its domestic affairs as well. But acknowledging these challenges, Mr. Li did recognize that given the different backgrounds and histories of China and the US, that differences are bound to occur, and he did say that some of them may be more acute than others, but what matters, he said, is how they are handled. Now, Premier Li did not respond directly to a question or to the latest announcement that top officials from both sides will be meeting in Alaska next week. But what he did say is that he hoped to see dialogue at various areas and levels, and that even if dialogue cannot work everything out, he said that this would go some way into helping to boost trust, dispel misgivings, and help better manage and mitigate differences between China and the US. And Premier Li did say that both countries should focus on areas where they have converging interests as well. Have a listen.
中美两国作为联合国的常任理事国，我们对于维护世界的和平稳定、促进世界的繁荣发展都有重要的责任，还是应该推动中美关系越过坎坷往前看，向着总体稳定的方向走。
Olivia, coming back to China's domestic economy, is Beijing downplaying its growth?
Well, according to Premier Li at the news conference, the short answer is no. And in fact, the Chinese premier did defend China's economic growth target that it has set for this year, which comes in at over 6%. And this as there have been questions about whether China is setting too low a bar. This given that economists have generally forecast that China's economy is expected to grow by over 8% this year. Also given that we are coming from a relatively low base of 2.3% growth in 2020. But the Chinese premier said that China would be happy to see robust robust growth, but he also did make mention that China is very aware of the uncertainties facing China's economic recovery as well as the global economic development as well. And he did say that this target should not be considered low given the size of China's economy. Also, he said that this target is not set in stone, but is meant to manage expectation. And very well, we could see China's economy growing at a much faster pace than the 6%. And so this target, leaves that possibility open. Premier Li also did say that China needs to avert wild swings in economic growth, as this would de-anchor market expectations, and saying what the country is after is steady growth in the long run. And Premier Li tried to give certain assurances that China would not be making any sudden shifts in its macroeconomic policy as well. And he did say that if China's recovery becomes more firm, that there may be some adjustments to temporary measures that had been introduced last year to boost the economy because of the impact of COVID-19. But if this were to happen, this would be mitigated by other policies like fees and tax cuts as well.
Thanks for that update. Li Keqiang speaking to us from Beijing.
China's National People's Congress also unanimously approved major reforms to Hong Kong's electoral system. This includes a mechanism to vet and screen politicians' loyalty to Beijing. Officials say that the changes will ensure that the region is only ruled by patriots. Well, critics fear that the move will further erode the city's freedoms and eliminate opposition voices. Roland Lim joins us live now for more on this story. Roland, what's been the response to Beijing's latest resolution for Hong Kong?
Well, the electoral reforms have already long been flagged by the central government as well as the local administration here. So the people on the street are already anticipating the type of changes that will be made here in Hong Kong. It will be a massive overhaul of its political systems. And many people are recognizing that anyone with ambitions to try to change democratically within the system, the politics of Hong Kong will not likely be able to get in past the front gate, the getting into and then be elected in public office. We've also had reactions from Executive Councillor Bernard Chen. Now, he sits in Carrie Lam's, the chief executives, in a cabinet and advises her. He says that the progress made for democratic reforms in the past 20 years in Hong Kong hasn't actually achieve their true purpose. And for that reason, that's why the central government has had to step in with this massive electoral reform package. He says that, yes, it will be a retrogression of the steps that have been taken in the past 20 years, but he hopes that the people will understand where the central government is coming from, and that with time, that people will learn to trust the system. Overseas, internationally, we've already heard from UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who says that with this electoral reform package will mean that there will be the loss of international confidence and trust in China, going further to say that the freedoms and the rights of Hong Kong residents are now being undermined with the inability to have free and fair elections. The central government, of course, has ultimate goals with this electoral reform package, and it is basically to prevent anti-China forces, they say, from exploiting the loopholes and the deficiencies within the electoral system, and that the ultimate aim of the electoral package is also to dilute influence of any one party, any one sector, any one individual when it comes to open and fair elections, and ultimately also to improve the policy-making decisions that has to be made in Hong Kong. And that will provide a better and smoother administration of the one country, two systems rule that governs Hong Kong currently.
All right, Roland, thank you very much for that. Roland Lim there reporting.